I'm Rob Carlson. I'm a principal at Biodesic, which is an engineering and consulting firm in Seattle. Well, my own experience in my garage is first, what are you going to do? And that part's not so bad. It's not so hard to imagine that you can build something these days using synthetic DNA or building a metabolic network or something like that. How do you design it? Well, you can basically go to your laptop and use a text editor to figure out what DNA you want to order out. And then at this point, it's not so hard to order out that DNA. When I started, it took, I think, 6 months for the first time I made my order. And now it'd probably be more like 6 weeks or even 6 days, depending on who you order it from. So that's not such a barrier as well. But now we get to the hard part, which is now that you've got your DNA, what do you do with it? And it turns out to be a lot harder than I expected to take that DNA and qualify, whether it's a circuit or whether you're making a protein, whatever it is, how you make that work in a way that is communicable either to a journal or to investors or to customers. Well, if I'd started the same company tomorrow, then it would cost a lot less than we spent. So there's one lesson. The reason that I started it in my garage in the first place is that I was watching the costs come down, DNA's sequencing costs, DNA synthesis costs, et cetera, and that's all gotten a lot better, a lot cheaper since when we started. But the hard part again is the kind of supply chain issue. It's the sort of thing that it wasn't obvious we were going to stumble over, but we had to be ready to adapt to, and it turns out that in this case we just decided we didn't want to do that. I think another lesson that I've learned out of that is that the patent on that molecule is probably valuable, but the cost of the patent has been much more than the capital cost of the project. And of course, I have no idea how much labor I put into it. The sweat equity, is worth way more than anything else, but it isn't quantifiable, and it isn't something that I can get paid for ever, really, because it's sweat equity. But the patent, because it costs so much more than the capital part of the project, it's actually not clear to me now that it was worth getting the patent or worth paying for it when we paid for it. And so I would be much more willing now. We asked the question when we started this, should we bother patenting it? Should it be open source? Should we try to make it a trade secret? What should we do? We decided to go for a patent. Looking back, I'm not so sure that was the best strategy, because the patent has cost probably 5 times what the rest of the project cost at this point. And I think I would be tempted in the future because of, there are always things you don't understand. There are always risks you're taking that you don't know about, where this protein expression problem would be one in this case, that really slowed the whole thing down. Because something like that is always going to show up. I think it's really worth asking whether a patent is worth the cost, because a patent is a really long-term investment. It's very expensive. And if we'd spent the money that we spent on the patent instead on getting pure protein, we would have been on the market a long time ago. We could have been selling stuff by now. But instead, we're not ready, and we have a patent, and we have to go get more money effectively because we spent a bunch of money on the patent in order to get protein to, I think that was a strategic decision that I would revisit the next time around. And I would encourage other people who are thinking about garage biology startups to also very carefully think about whether a patent is really worth it to them. I think the challenge here, especially for people who are interested in making synthetic DNA, is that they have to translate the decrease in cost of synthetic DNA into a decrease in cost for the rest of the project, which at the moment is the majority of the cost of the project. And I want to believe that cheaper DNA synthesis will lead to cheaper products, cheaper product development, more biological products on the marketplace. But the kind of historical reality is that until you collapse the whole cost of developing a new product, you're not going to make that much impact. And so one of the things we were talking about today is all the many different pieces of the bioengineering value chain that have to improve, whether it's design or test or build, that is DNA synthesis and assembly. And I think that more people need to take that lesson to heart, right? That it wasn't that the internet, et cetera, was a large-scale infrastructure project. You know, it's Intel, it's Microsoft, it's Cisco, it's many companies all pushing very hard, where they understand the demand, they understand what changes in, what decreases in cost of any of their products will do for increase in usage. I'm not sure that same careful thought has gone into companies that are trying to embark in synthetic biology yet.